Welcome to Mixtapes and Mopeds, the podcast where lifelong friends Red, Wheels, and Panda take you back to the golden era of the 80s and 90s. Join us as we dive into our favorite memories growing up, discussing everything from epic sports moments to iconic music tracks, and from unforgettable movie scenes to any other topic that sparks our interest. Get ready for a nostalgic journey packed with laughter, insights, and the unbreakable bond of friendship. Welcome to Mixtapes and Mopeds.
Folks, welcome to our podcast, and we're going to call it Podcast 2.0 because, frankly, last week was supposed to just be a demo performance. We didn't think it was going to see the light of day, but our five fans got to view it. So,
hey, plus we got one. Come on, and the
Mom,
mom, and sisters and brothers,
and Lee Collier from North Carolina.
Yeah, Lee Collier. Yes.
Who happens to
love
be
you, brother.
He happens to be a good friend.
Oh, okay. So I thought we had a fan, but apparently not.
Cheating.
Who went to North Carolina and he was out probably pulling a Tyler climbing a telephone pole when North Carolina NC State won.
NC State, yeah, that was a nice performance by them. So one of the things we learned last week, because again, it was a demo, first time out, we've never done this before, so we were just kind of winging it. But one thing we learned is that we had a few technical difficulties, so we have addressed the difficulties. So I'd like to do a mic check for me. How am I sounding? You guys can hear me? All good? Am I sounding good?
Yeah.
Hola, good. Check for me.
On.
And then
Yep.
All right, Tyler, give us a sound check.
Check one. Check
All
one.
right, we've got some new mics that I did a little research and found out from my son that I did well. So hopefully the sound will be a lot better this week and moving forward. So one more thing before we get into the show. So this has been kind of bothering me. So I don't know if it bothers you guys, but we are this podcast is the Mixtapes and Mopeds podcast, but it's really the Red Wheels Panda show here, and Red being Tyler, who we call Red Rocker or Red, and Wheels being Steve Wheeler, which the last name is where that comes from.
Come on, I was fast back in the day.
And he was fast.
Fat or fast?
Well, okay, well, let's go fast. And then yours truly, Andy, at Panda. And so the weird thing for me is that I don't always call Tyler Red. In fact, I rarely call him Red. And Steve, who I do call Wheels a little bit more, but I mostly call him Steve. So I think we need to have some rules of engagement here. Are we allowed to call ourselves by our names, or do we have to do the nickname thing to kind of stay on brand?
Panda, we gotta go with Panda and Red. Come on.
Panda and Red. All right.
Yeah.
Tyler, what do you think?
I don't call. I rarely call Andy Panda. He's Android.
You're Android. Yeah, I'm Android too.
And
yeah.
Weasel.
Yeah,
You're Weasel to me. I mean, but so be it. So be it.
So I think we should make a rule that whatever you choose to do is fine. Because I'm sure I'm going to blow it if we have to go the nickname route. So
don't tell me what I have to call you.
Exactly. So you know what I mean when I call you Tyler or Red. Okay. All right. Good. So we settled that. All right. So that's it for the intro. Looking forward to a good show here today. Our first segment is led by Mr. Wheels, Steve Wheeler, and I'm going to turn it over to Speed Racer, and that's going to make a lot more sense here in a second when you hear what Steve has to say. So, Steve, take it away.
Going back to the 80s, for us growing up, one of the things about freedom that we always thought about, they're probably even back in the 60s or 70s, having your first bike, getting away from your parents. Parents would say, hey, make sure you're home when the lights come on. And that's when you had to be home. Didn't matter about the time, but when the street lights come on, you got to be home. One of the things when we were growing up that kind of hit hard was the invention of the moped. And I don't know if anybody remember the Honda store on Lincoln Avenue, but the moped came out, right? And they passed a law. It said 14 years old, you can ride a moped. And man, that was the first $299 I went out there and spend. To get, which sounds like a lot of money. Plus, there was that.
That's a lot of money today.
Yeah.
There was some auto
That's a
store that
tank of
sold one
gas.
for $199. And one of our friends that will remain nameless, the first time I ever met him, I saw him with this moped of one of his friends jumping a ramp and flying through it. And the very first time I meet him, he's riding his moped, and the moped splits in half as he jumps over the ramp. And we could all know who that guy was. Yeah, splitting the moped in half, but it was a thing, so we could, everybody had a moped to get away from the parents. And I bought one at 14. It was a great one, but they had rules, and nobody really paid attention to the rules. Well, I made the front page in our town. It was called the Lancaster Eagle Gazette. Made the front
The
page,
leg.
front bottom, and had got pulled over because a Lancaster policeman caught us going up Cedarland Hill, and I got clocked going 28 miles an hour. And your moped was not allowed going over 20 miles an hour. So we made the page because he arrested both me and the other gentleman on the mopeds for going 28 on our 20-mile-an-hour mopeds. I had to appear in front of, and I don't know if they're related. If it was it wasn't Judge Clark. What was the other judge? Anyway, I had to go in front of the judge, and the guy looked at it and goes, "You were doing 28 and a 20. All right, we're throwing that one out because it's just as bad as dumb as it possibly could be of getting a ticket for riding a moped." But what they did say, that was not a moped, it was a motorcycle because it went 28 miles per hour. So that's my moped story. So now I am out riding electric bikes. So I feel like I'm going back in the full circle because we bought electric bikes. We're big, avid fans of riding bikes around Hilton Head. And so now we're trading back, getting out of the regular bike and getting into the electric bike. But that's the background on mopeds of the 80s.
Did you save the
Because
front
we
page
make more
clip?
than $2.50 an hour.
$2.35. Yeah. I think my mom has it.
That's what I figured.
It's in
Yeah.
some book.
Has to be.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Archived.
Well, there's even a second part of the story. So I got the ticket for riding a 28 and a 20. So I was not getting rid of my moped, and I borrowed my neighbor's motorcycle tag, and I put the tag on the back of my moped and still kept on riding it. And 1 week before I turned 16, I'm riding my moped again with the helmet on with the motorcycle tag and get pulled over again. And I had to show back up in Judge Clark's court. And he goes, "Really?"
Here we
28.
go.
Here we go. 28 and a 20. He goes, "Get out of here." Right. You're not, he didn't even find me. He just, "Get out of here."
Please don't come back.
That's my moped stories.
There we
Two
go.
of them.
All right. Very good. So I will jump into the next segment, and we're going to rotate around topics every week, things that we love. Like Tyler and I tend to rotate probably on the music topic because we both are big into music. And so this week I get the music segment. So I found something on Facebook. I actually found a really good page on Facebook that like posts every day, like top 40 from like the 80s and whatnot. And I just took one and just wanted to I'll share it here in a second and then we can comment on it. But before we jump into that, last week was the 30th anniversary of the passing of Kurt Cobain. And that hits all of us, I think. Nirvana was very short-lived, but just changed the arc of rock and roll. I was big in rock and roll, and then next thing you know is grunge, and Nirvana was really leading the charge. And then in a snap of the fingers, he was gone. So I know, Reg, you wanted to talk a bit about that, so I'll turn this over to you for a second.
I couldn't believe when I saw that on Twitter this week that it's been 30 years. Really makes us feel old. I lived in Washington, D.C., lived and worked in Washington, D.C., the greater metro area, Northern Virginia, and heard it on the radio that day, first week of April, 1994. I mean, I was a young kid, and quite frankly, I was not a huge Nirvana fan at the time, but loved everything that they did and meant to the musical alternative landscape at the time. I mean, them and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden all came out same time. So early 94, I mean, I was 26 years old. And I heard on the radio that afternoon, it was a Friday afternoon that he died, because this was before, obviously, social media, cell phones. We heard on the radio. I'm in my car, and I heard that Kurt Cobain died of a self-inflicted shotgun wound, killed himself. Unbelievably, coincidentally, beyond coincidence, me and my friends in Washington, D.C. at the time had tickets to a Pearl Jam concert that night.
Oh, wow.
That night. Obviously, you bought these tickets 3-4 months in advance. These days, you buy them a year in advance. But we had these tickets, and I'm like, well, there's no way. Cobain just killed himself. There's no way Pearl Jam's going to play at the Patriot Center at George Mason University in Northern Virginia that night. But they sure as hell did. And we didn't know until literally we walked up to the venue, because again, this is 1994. I mean, we didn't have any. There was no social media. There was no way to alert fans ahead of time. We showed up for the show. Walking up to the venue, we didn't know that they were going to play, but they did, and it was like I've seen Pearl Jam 3 or 4 times in my life. And not only was this the greatest Pearl Jam show I've ever seen, it was one of the most memorable rock concert experiences I've ever seen, because it was like a funeral. It was, because you think about Pearl Jam and Nirvana, they were friends. They were coming up in Seattle together at the same time. They rode each other's coattails the whole way in the early 90s. And it was surreal. And they came out, and the first song they played was Release, which was the last song on 10, the first album. And this was 94, when 10 was kind of an afterthought, not an afterthought, but 94, they open with this, and it's, Stone Gossard kind of noodling that electric guitar, real slow intro. They usually come out, Pearl Jam's usually going to come out and blow you away with their first song, but they didn't. It was that I'll never forget. Eddie Vedder came out and said, "I think we're all feeling the same thing tonight." This is hours, not days, not weeks, hours after Cobain died, that we all just found out about this. And I'll never forget that show at all.
We're going to talk about next the Who concert in Cincinnati. Good God.
Well, that was good too. But I hold the pain, release me. That was what they opened with. They opened with Release, the last song on the 10 album, and it was the slowest song that they could have done, and it was I'd still get chills thinking about it.
All right. Can you guys, what are you seeing here?
We see your list.
Top
What year
tracks.
is this? What year
Top
is this?
tracks.
All right. So thank you for that, Tyler. That was, I know, impactful to all of us, but I guess maybe on a somewhat lighter note, this is from first week of April 1982. These are top rock tracks. And I thought periodically I would just kind of pull these up because I think it's interesting. One, there's a ton of great songs and bands represented on here, but then there's also a bunch of like, who are they or what are they doing on here? So I thought I would just share this list. And interestingly, Tommy Two Tone at the top of the list, 8675309. Like that song is crazy, but that has hit my own kids' generation. That song still kind of resonates with the younger folks these days. But very interesting that was where was number one back in '82.
Out of
But
all those songs, I mean, how many of our kids? I mean, your kids mine don't listen to much of anything of the past.
None. Although I did
name,
I did name my second daughter Carly Jett with 2 T's, her middle name, and I see Joan Jett on there, but
twice. She's on there twice.
Why? Yeah.
Oh no, kid. Oh yeah.
Good get.
Yeah. So
Dancing in Clover, over and over.
So I've seen
the Charlie Horse Saloon. There we go.
Oh wow, that's going way back.
Roll.
So Joan, I've seen her each of the last 2 summers, and I'm going to see her opening up for Heart this coming May, I think. So I will be 3 years in a row to see her, which is really cool. She's still got it, man. After all these years, she's out there. We talked last week about the bands that are still going strong, and she's still going strong. Her voice sounds amazing, and she's still got a lot of energy. So love her. Van Halen. So Pretty Woman. That was from Diver Down, right? Tyler?
Yep.
That was that was one of those like
that was their last. That was pretty much their swan song before they started fighting.
That was just a throw together album that they owed the record company, and it turned out to be a pretty good album as far as I was concerned. There was a lot of good tracks on there. Obviously, a lot of covers on that particular album.
About half.
1984 wasn't that last one? 1984, Hot for Teacher.
Yeah, that was their final.
That was but Diver Down was when they were still somewhat getting along. Half the album's covers. And they were already starting to split, but no, I mean, it was a great album to listen to these days.
Yeah. Did you?
What are some of these bands that are? Help me out here. What?
Yeah, I was trying to figure that one out too. Who the hell
what
was
is
that?
Dwight Twilley doing on there?
Gamma? Who's?
Johnny and the Distractions? Who's that?
I wasn't totally deaf and dumb and.
What about whoa? What about Bob and Doug McKenzie?
Yeah.
Well, at least I remember. I mean, take off.
Take off, you hoser.
Take off, hoser, you hoser.
How big was Huey Lewis in the News back? I mean, at that age. I mean, and there's still some old bands that are in there. I mean, Thin Lizzy. God love Thin Lizzy for still hanging there with and Dwight Twilley. I mean, that guy had been around forever at the time. Hagar was solo. I mean,
do you remember Senior Skip Day? Senior Skip Day. Take off to the amusement park. Where'd we go? Down in Cincinnati. We'd go to Kings Island. Yeah, Kings Island. And that's who was playing that day was Huey Lewis and the News. As everybody just goes and get hammered to go down there for a Senior Skip Day. Were you down there, Andy, or were you playing baseball?
We were threatened to be thrown off the baseball team if we went down there, which, by the way, didn't stop several of my teammates from doing it, but I did not go.
Yeah, I was going to say
who was Prism? They were number 3 on the chart. Prism. Don't let him know. That's
no recollection.
No,
not a clue
either.
But Sammy Hagar, he put out a couple of really killer solo albums about this time. Standing Hampton, right?
Yep.
It was a good album.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Johnny and the Distractions. I mean, who is Johnny and the Distractions down there?
No.
Wow. Genesis, obviously. Genesis was they were starting to hit at that
Yeah.
Duke Jupiter. I'll drink to you. Wow. Yeah. Loverboy was still very Bryan Adams wheelhouse. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw Bryan Adams last year. He was going strong. He actually Joan Jett opened up for Bryan Adams last year, which was a good show. So just interesting. Like maybe about 20% of these bands I don't know. Most of the others I did, but interesting. I was a big Jay Giles fan. I know
Love
Jay
Jay Giles.
Jay Giles died not too long ago, a few years back. That was a band that I have a list of bands I'm trying to catch up. They're all kind of dying off on me, but that was one of the bands I wanted to see and never did, so I regret that. But I'll always loved their live albums in particular. They're really good.
Oh man, love Jay Giles.
Yeah.
How many of them were there? Like 13 in that band?
I don't know. There were quite a few. You had the
Oh, they
They're
were a
from
house
Boston.
band. They were a
Yeah.
house band. Boston house band. They, if you saw them live back in the day, or any time for that matter, they had 15 people on stage. They were a house band. They weren't just a guitar player, bass player, drummer, and singer. They had horns. They had background girls. They were a house band. God love them. They were one of the great live bands.
They really were. Yeah. But anyway, so I thought that would be interesting just to kind of rehash there. Well, I'll pick another, next time around, I'll probably pick another time frame, but it's just always interesting to look back. Oh, Quarter Flash. That was a band. I thought they were a one-hit
Gonna
wonder.
harden my heart.
Yeah, that's not even the song that's on here, but
No, Find Another Fool. I don't even know what that is. This is, you know what this is. So April '82. This is 1 year into MTV, right?
Yeah, just about.
2
Yep.
years, maybe 2 years. Well,
Maybe
what was
two.
MTV? MTV was the end of '80 or
Yeah, I
81.
think it was 80. I think it was 80.
August of 8. Yeah. Okay. So a couple years into MTV. And we all remember that. I mean, that was you talk about life altering. All these bands were huge MTV video band. They had to be. That's how they made their money.
Yeah.
These days the bands make their money. They don't even make their money touring anymore. They make their money on merchandise. They sure as hell don't sell. They make their money touring. I shouldn't say that. That was a bad say. They of course make their money touring. They don't make their money selling their CDs or their tapes or their records or their music anymore, because there is no audio. We get it for free.
Yeah.
Or not for free, but we get it for $15 a month on Apple Music. They sell T-shirts and posters at the concerts, and they charge $250 for the nosebleeds. That's how they make money anymore.
Yeah.
Back, these MTV bands, they had to get popular on the videos.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Tyler, I don't know if you guys have seen there's a show called, I think it's called The Playlist. It's on Netflix, I believe. And it's 6 episodes, and it is Spotify. It's basically about the founding of Spotify, and the 6 episodes are told from the perspective of a different person involved with the company. And like the first one is the founder, then it's like the principal investor, it's like the marketing person, it's like the lawyer, it's like somebody from the music industry, and then it's from the artist perspective. And the artist perspective is pretty bleak, how Spotify and these music apps have just pretty much decimated the struggling musician. The folks that can go out and, like you said, charge $250 for nosebleed and get $40 for a t-shirt, they're doing just fine. But the folks that are just trying to make something and try to live off of what they get from the Spotifys of the world is not really happening for them. And that was an interesting kind of show to watch. If you have any interest, I would recommend that.
Andy, I thought we wanted Spotify to post our shit so we get some money out of this thing at some point. You pretty much just Spotify, we love you. Thank you. Good night.
Yes.
We
It's funny. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I think they will somehow allow us to post on
they'll
their podcasting
they'll somehow
service.
roll.
So,
They'll
yeah.
roll through that.
I think they're a few $1 billion to the good. They don't really care what the hell we say. All right. So I think that's it for my section. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Red, for your topic of the week.
Yeah, I woke up this morning thinking about the nostalgia. March Madness is over. Basketball season's over, right? What do we do? What do we do now? And it kind of gets me there with two teenage daughters that played sports. Basketball season is different. We saw greatness this year in both girls and boys basketball, women's and men's basketball.
Did you see the ratings Saturday night?
Especially women's. Yes.
7 million people.
Yes. And God love it. As the dad of two daughters, one of which played basketball, and of course she hung it up last year right before we went and were runners up in the state. But I love nothing more. But the idea, I look back to when we were kids, and I do this a lot more than most, but the nostalgia of Miller Park, baseball, the Miller Park in Lancaster, Ohio, where parents sat with each other, opposing teams' parents sat with each other and cheered on their kids, and didn't scream at each other, didn't fight with umpires, didn't. And I'm not saying it was a perfect world, but
That's a good question, Tyler. By the way,
youth sports is different.
Do you remember back in those, Andy? You played a lot of baseball. I played a little bit, but did your parents did the parents scream out there a lot back in the day?
So I think
didn't.
what Tyler says, I think was true definitely at the younger ages. I think as you kind of did some of the travel stuff, it got there was
high school.
Yeah, high school. I mean, high school baseball has always been a certain way. So I don't think that's necessarily what you're talking about, Tyler. It's really more the youth, in this day and age, when you got parents buying $350 baseball bats and all the things they do for all these sports and put their kids on travel this or travel that. It is different. It's just not the social event. It's now you got your kids competing, and I'm guilty of it because I had 3 boys and they were doing all kinds of, football and basketball and baseball and travel. And Atlanta is like the hub of travel baseball with Perfect Game here and all that. And so it's definitely a different world than it was back then. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was thinking about. I mean, because I related to my youngest, who we went from in the 80s and 90s basically practicing, from junior high, even high school, practicing a couple nights a week, game once or twice a week, to like you said, Andy. I mean, you got 3 boys that are baseball studs, basketball, and you play. It's a year-round sport, and it's a year-round commitment, not only for the kids but for the families. I mean, you go from they don't get nights off. They don't get nights off until it's the middle of the summer for 3 weeks before they start school. And it's totally different than it was when we were growing up. I'm not going to say it's better than or worse, but I think about I watch these teams, both the men's and the women's basketball, which is only one of the many sports. And these kids, I mean, what do they do when they don't go to the NBA or the WNBA? I mean, are they really prepared for have they done anything else in their life when all they've done for the last 18, 19, 20 years is practice every night play 3-4 times a week. Go, travel. I mean, I remember the travel schedules in the summer, AAU and stuff. We didn't do that when we didn't.
No.
There was no AAU when we whether it was baseball, basketball. It's crazy, and but I'm as guilty as anybody because I did it with my youngest, and I loved it, I absolutely loved it. But now, thank God, I mean, she's still, a junior in high school that's got pretty good grades and is going to go to college, and she's spinning blizzards at Dairy Queen, making $15 an hour, which we didn't do that at Super Scoop, Arthur Treacher's.
That wasn't the minimum wage there at Super Scoop.
Are you kidding me? But it got me a little lamenting this morning. Think about the end of the basketball season. What a great run, and where we are.
Did you have a little bit of like ownership of that Super Scoop, to just the building or the business?
Hell no. Are you kidding me?
Okay. I just wanted to apologize because we may have stolen a sign from that place once.
I hope you did. I hope you did. The old man did.
Oh, okay. I own a sign.
What? Speaking of the Final Four, like I tell you, I was impressed by Zach Edey. I tell you, he was a one man. It just goes to show.
If it weren't for him, they would have lost by 40.
Yeah, it was a 1-on-5.
It was a 1-on-5. That dude was incredible.
Yeah, he was. But obviously, UConn is going to go down as one of those legendary teams. They are just so good.
Well coached can you go figure out to say, he goes, all right, I'm going to let Zach Edey beat me, but those other 4 guys, I'm going to cover them so hard. Perfect game plan.
Well, when your backcourt is 6'5", 6'5", 6'6", seriously, I'm not a coach, but I mean, I could coach UConn. When your backcourt is 6'5", 6'5", 6'6", I'm pretty sure I could coach that. Purdue has got some shooters. They didn't get a chance. They shot like one. They made 1 3-pointer because they had. You got a 6'6" guy. How many point guards are 6'6"? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Can you also connect the microphones for the TV camera crew?
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Well, yeah, and then they had a 7-2 guy in the middle. So yeah, that was a good team. I don't know how they lost a game, honestly, this year, just the way they played.
They were a totally different team than last year. He lost 3 guys in the NBA last year. Totally different team this year. So good for him.
He's a whale of a coach.
Who's going to take over
Kentucky?
That was out of the blue a little bit, right? I mean, I know he's got a lot of pressure, and obviously he lost to Oakland, and he's underachieved with all that talent in the last few years. But I didn't think that he would.
Billy Donovan. What do you think? I mean,
no, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know.
Someone smaller.
I don't think it's gonna be Billy Donovan. Do you see? I mean, in the projected draft, there's 4 Kentucky players in the first 2 rounds. 4 Kentucky players.
Plus, they got some portal guys that already jumped into the portal, so they're gonna be starting over. Whoever takes that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, they'll find somebody strong, but there's already been a bunch of step up saying they're not taking it.
Yeah.
Curious about Rick Pitino, right? Will he take it? No.
Jesus.
Coming full circle, that would be classic if that happened.
Right. It won't. No.
Yeah.
I think that time has
Scenes
passed.
from an Italian restaurant.
In the strip bar.
Well, the portal has totally changed the game of basketball for sure, but football.
Basketball's been basketball more than anything else.
Yeah, because
You think
You can-
basketball more than football?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you can you can come in, have like no starters on your team and go to the portal and get 5, and you can be competitive that very next year.
Look at NC State. Every 5 of those starters, every
Yeah.
one of those starters were from the portal.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, obviously you can do this. You can do the same things in football. You just got so many more positions to fill, and it's got to be so much more cohesive. I think it's just harder to do. I think you're better in football just to fill in gaps that you would have otherwise had to struggle through. But in basketball, I mean, you can come in and geez, you can be in the tournament your first year from nothing. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time. There's a lot of programs trying to do that now after they see watching NC State get to the Final Four doing it that way.
That was pretty cool. Both NC State's men's and women's got in there.
Yeah. And one other thing, I want to talk about Caitlyn Clark just a bit. Obviously, she has driven ratings that are just never before approached in the women's game, and she truly was kind of a special player. And I've read, I think, from the LSU and some other folks, saying how she's going to struggle in the WNBA, which that's an adjustment for anybody, not just her. But I think she's got that kind of Steph Curry game that she'll figure out whatever she needs to figure out, and I think she'll be an impact WNBA player. What are you guys thinking?
Well, I personally, I'm on the side of I like somebody that steps up to be a positive role model, and so for her being a role model in that sport, I mean, she's one heck of a player. She's great in front of the camera. She's humble about her teammates. Of course, she knows she's good, but she seems to be somewhat humble about it. And I think she gets the following because of how relatable she is for all the girls out there playing just that sport and any other sport. We had that with the U.S. soccer team, and then all of a sudden, they had a little bit of the challenge with some things that went on. Everybody went, but not her. She's just she had the question that would you have played anybody else from Iowa if you would have won a championship? She's like, no, this is my place. I wanted my 3 years here. I wanted to spend my time here. I wanted to be around the folks from Iowa, and we're missing that the portal, and I think athletes are missing out on that. Having that place you go back to, this is home. That even if you're a 500 team or a 700 team, you didn't win the championship, but it's your home. Go back to your home and relive some memories, and we're missing out on that. She was a great example of that.
Yeah, well said. I'm not an expert on the WNBA whatsoever, but I could become a fan watching her. I mean, she's been fun. She's been transformative. I mean, generational talent. Like I said, you guys know I've got a 17, 18-year-old daughter that one of which played basketball, and I've watched more girls basketball at the college level the last 2 years than I have in my entire life times 10, and a lot of that's Caitlyn Clark driven. Will she succeed in the WNBA? Who knows? She's short, but she can. The girl can shoot from the
Half
parking
court.
lot. She can shoot from the parking lot and make shots. So
You know what they ought to do? They need to bring back that commercial with Larry Bird and her, the McDonald's commercial of the horse campaign, where it was Bird and Magic, where they were like pick your shot around the arena. They need
or the
to pull
McDonald's
her and
for
Steph Curry.
the horse.
The horse.
Yes.
Okay. That would be a
Yes.
fantastic commercial for McDonald's to go over and do that again.
Oh, she is.
They probably will.
Yeah. And I guess final shout out to South Carolina. I mean, they went undefeated this year, beat a really good Iowa team. That's hard to do any year in any sport. So shout out to that crew.
Both champions, South Carolina women and UConn men. I mean, nobody was beating either one of those teams this year.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. All right. I think that's
before we go, Andy.
Yep.
I have one thing for Tyler. Hey, Tyler, what do Mopeds and your next door neighbor in Brookhaven have in common? They're fun to ride, but you can't tell anybody about it.
Woo! Cut! Cut! Cut!
Is that how we're going out on this? All right, boys. Well, that was a good 2.0 episode for us. Just kind of some announcements here. So last week we had just posted to YouTube, but this week we're going to be posting hopefully both the first and the second show to both Apple Podcast as well as Spotify. So we'll figure that out. We're still kind of working through all this, but we expect to have those up this week at some point. So looking forward to that. And, we've got 5 happy listeners, and our goal, I think, is to see if we can get to 10. So we're just trying to get to double figures.
Check one. Check one. Check one.
Yeah, I think you're good. All right. Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap for this week. So thanks all. We'll catch you next week. Later.
See you, boys.
See ya.
Bye.